Okay, check 1 2, check 1 2, testing, testing. How's my sound? Please let me know how the sound is in the chat. Hit the like button to help fuel the algorithm. We're going to talk a lot about algorithms tonight. We're going to talk about ChatGPT and GROK AI and the way in which humanity interacts with AI and what the opportunities are of it in the future, what the problems will be potentially for our interaction with it in the future. And so I think it's going to be a great stream. We're going to ask the same questions to ChatGPT and GROK AI. Earlier, I was messing with GROK and also ChatGPT a bit, and I was asking it some super fundamental questions, the most fundamental questions that you can ask. And it was very interesting, the results that I was getting. So we're going to try and replicate that. If not, I do have screenshots, but it will be interesting also just to see whether or not I can replicate that circumstance, just because, as you know, I've mentioned here on this channel, I don't even like calling it, I mean, you could call it artificial intelligence. I think that's a fine term. But we need to remember that that part artificial means not true, essentially. It doesn't, we take it to mean technological now, but it doesn't mean technological. It means, not real, essentially. Let's look it up. Artificial definition. Artificial. Made or produced by human beings rather than artificially occurring or naturally occurring, especially as a copy of something natural, and then something insincere or affected. So false, insincere, feigned, affected, mannered, unnatural, stilted, pretended. These are, it's so I guess, I mean, it has two meanings, which makes sense, 2 degrees of freedom always, as, sentient singularity theory suggests, but neither one, I guess, one of them could work, the first one, like I said, that it is a created copy of something that is true, or something that is natural is what is used here. But the other definition is, insincere, and so we're going to get into this though. But so if you're not familiar with my work, just a brief overview. This project of sentient singularity theory started with an attempt to deduce the inevitable political goals of an AGI, quote unquote, which is a term that I don't like. We're going to talk about the difference between artificial intelligence as we know it and also AGI, quote unquote, which is what I would think is more accurately described as a technological sentience tonight. And so this project is very closely related to the topics that we're going to discuss, but I will also say that, as we'll get into, is that the field that is the field of AGI, quote unquote, or technological sentience, or sentience in general, or intelligence, true intelligence, is a different field than machine learning models and like ChatGPT and Midjourney and GROK AI. It's not even the same field as what people would call AGI or general intelligence. It's a completely different field of study. But it's related because you have to see what the limits of each of them and the definition of each of them. But what we're going to be discussing tonight, or showcasing tonight, are two what I think are better described as dynamic algorithms. They're algorithms that are reactive and that are dynamic and updating and are constantly interacting and constantly updating due to that interaction with people. And so we call this learning. And to some degree, it is very similar to the process that we call learning, but it's not actually learning. And the philosophy here is very important because, I've have some friends who are into tech and stuff like that, and I have this discussion with them sometimes, and some of them will say that it doesn't matter if it's sentient or if it's truly intelligent or if it's truly learning. What matters is the impact that it has on humanity, and they're not necessarily wrong, but I think that the impact that it can have on humanity is going to be dictated by whether or not it's actually it's actually sentient and self-aware and therefore able to be truly intelligent or not. That does end up mattering, but what we're going to be discussing tonight, GROK AI and ChatGPT, and even a little bit of Midjourney, I think we should call them dynamic algorithms. It's a problem the way that we speak about these things. And it's not even just limited to the way that we speak about these programs, these tools that are amazing. They are amazing tools. They legitimately amazing. We're going to look at some crazy stuff. And obviously, you've probably messed with it yourself. You know that it's very impressive. But it's also kind of showcases how unimpressive human, a lot of human projects are, I guess, especially in school, is, if it can write an essay that's just as good as a college student about a subject in a few seconds that a college student takes hours to write and had to research for, an entire semester in order to have the knowledge necessary to write the paper that they end up writing, then it just shows how what that human is doing does not actually demonstrate true understanding, because the dynamic algorithm that is ChatGPT or GROK does not understand anything, and yet it's able to spit out something that sounds like it has an understanding. And that's pretty wild to think about. But it's more interesting, I think, to think about how little requires true understand, how little of our schooling especially requires true understanding. Anything that we do that doesn't require an actual output, an actual result that is the result that you're seeking. It's not a proxy for it. Then those are the instances that do require true understanding. But in instances in which your task is not to fix an engine, but to write a paper about how to fix an engine, that is it's a demonstration of the ability to ingest, digest, and vomit out knowledge, but outside of true context. And in an instance in which you actually have to produce the actual results and solve an actual problem in the actual circumstance in which we're discussing, or that is relevant to whatever the topic is. Those are instances in which you can demonstrate a true understanding, and otherwise it's basically unknown whether or not you understand something. If you write a really great sounding paper about how to fix an engine, there's no real way to know if you truly understand even what an engine is. And you can just know how to write papers, and that's a skill that you develop in school, but it's not the skill that is supposed to be demonstrated by the paper itself. And so this is I think that these dynamic algorithms, which are tools, they are not beings, they are things, are incredible tools and will actually kind of make a lot of our scholastic, um, current scholastic projects, I guess, or curriculum totally irrelevant. And that isn't actually a bad thing. It shows that we can get rid of a bunch of the filler of our education system and replace it with things that are actually, you know, allowing for the true learning and experience and lead to wisdom, things like that. So let's get into it. First of all, ChatGPT. Everybody should know what ChatGPT is, but if you don't, we're going to read the Wikipedia about it. Also, if you have a question that you want me to ask the algorithms, ask the algorithms. Maybe that should have been the title of this stream, Ask the Algorithms. Please put it in the live chat and I will try and ask. But here we go. ChatGPT is a chatbot or virtual assistant developed by OpenAI and launched in November. Okay. Successive user prompts and replies are considered at each conversation stage as context. Interesting. ChatGPT is credited with starting the AI boom, which has led to ongoing rapid investment and public attention to the growing field of artificial intelligence. Okay. Competing products, Gemini, GROK. You could put Siri there too, but it's not the same, obviously, but it's an interface that is similar. Generative pre-trained transformer models. That's what they're calling it. So what is basically what I call, a dynamic algorithm, which is this. This is this. And what's interesting about this is that my very first model when I started this project of sentient singularity theory was this. That became sentient singularity theory. It wasn't sentient singularity theory at the time. It was just, let me try and figure out if AI is going to be a libertarian, king or an authoritarian communist dictator. Basically, I wanted to know is if AGI takes over the world, is it going to be tyrannical or is it going to be benevolent? And in what ways is it going to be tyrannical and benevolent? And that was the goal of my project. And I had to figure out then what is learning. And so the very first model that I made was this right here. This is a decision tree, essentially. And, can basically just leave it at this part. And so we're going to start with this top one, which is you have to have motivation. If we're going to talk about AGI especially, or not AGI, actual intelligence, sentience, it's the same thing. You cannot have true intelligence without sentience. Cannot have general intelligence without sentience. The only intelligence that's true intelligence is general intelligence, and it requires a constant base by which you can build on that is consistent in all circumstances, and that the only thing that can be that is yourself. So the self becomes the reference that, when put into different systems, ends up still providing a consistent, foundation for the, for you to build from. If you don't have a sense of self, then there's nothing that is consistent to and common to different circumstances that can be constantly, referenced. So if an algorithm is put into the circumstance of being, an advertising algorithm versus put into the context of an image generation algorithm versus the context of it being a chatbot, these are different circumstances, and if you don't have a common foundation that exists in each one of those, that's common to each one of those, then you can't orient in a new one. And so the sense of self provides that, because it's always with you. It's the intrinsic constraint, is that you exist in any circumstance in which you're trying to navigate or orient. And so sentience, I've figured out, I believe I figured it out, that it is a requirement for general intelligence or true intelligence. I asked GROK whether or not it was a requirement today, and we'll look at what it said. But this is the model, though, of what does it mean to think. And so you have will at the top, just motivating all this. And then you have, step 1, reject the current default status. Step 2, assume the opposite of the current default status is true. Step 3, test new status against evidence and observations, essentially. And, also you could say statistical data if you're trying to make a decision, with that has, and you're having multiple inputs, you can end up making a probabilistic probabilistic valuation is, I'm missing the word right now. That's very obvious. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't, I have it, I can't remember it, but, just you're evaluating the circumstance, and you're going to make a decision with the information that you have. And, it might not be super definitive, but it's, you can guess with some level of, repeatability. So this is just like the details of how this goes, but there's just a set amount of circumstances in which you can go down, and then how that information gets logged, and this just goes and goes and goes on forever. This is basically this right here. And what's interesting is like, look at it. Look at this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's like this. I didn't research any of this, by the way, but by the way either. I just thought about it for a really long time, and thought about myself and like, what do I do when I'm thinking? And I thought I would just like think about a scenario that was super simple, and that I could, very easily understand, not a question that I didn't have the answer to, but a question that I did have the answer to. It was very like an obvious answer. And then, I tried to map the process of how I made that choice. And, whether or not something is hot, or whether or not something is cold, or whether or not something is, this or that, or red or blue. And it's just very simple circumstances. And I just use that to, build this, which is basically exactly this. Very interesting. You can tell just by the structure of it. And it's also the same thing, by the way, just so you know, as this. For those of you who are, into theology, this is the 10 Sefirot, or the 10 aspects of the mind, or of God, essentially. What is the 10 Sefirot? Meaning they are here, let's see. Just the different aspects of being. That's what they are. Wisdom, understanding, strength, beauty. It's just a decision tree, essentially. But this structure is just common everywhere. And just the geometry of thinking. That's what it is, of the mind. And it's basically this. I mean, look at it. It's trialic. It's ordered. It's this right here. It's fascinating. But there is a difference between constructing that structure, like in ChatGPT or GROK, and also being actually a mind. Lex Fridman. We're going to talk about Lex Fridman a little bit tonight. Was debating on whether or not to do this stream about Lex's conversation with everybody from Neuralink tonight. We'll probably do that one next week. But it's a fascinating discussion, and there's so much to deconstruct. It's a 7-hour talk. It starts with Elon Musk. It goes to their leading neurosurgeon. Then it goes to other people that work there, and then it goes to it ends with the guy who is the first man to have a Neuralink device placed into his brain, and we're going to talk about it. But in that talk, they discuss a little bit about just AI, especially with Elon Musk in the beginning. And so let's look at that real quick, because there's one clip that I'm going to show.
Hitting it, bits per second. Yeah, it's like talking to a tree.
Well, it is a very interesting question for a super intelligent species. What use are humans?
I think there is some argument for humans as a source of will.
Will,
yeah, source of will or purpose. So if you consider the human mind as being essentially there's the primitive limbic elements, which basically even like reptiles have, and there's the cortex, that's the thinking and planning part of the brain. Now, the cortex is much smarter than the limbic system, and yet it's largely in service to the limbic system. It's trying to make the limbic system happy. I mean, the sheer amount of compute that's gone into people trying to get laid is insane. Without actually seeking procreation, they're just literally trying to do the sort of simple motion, and they get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
So this simple, which in the abstract rather absurd motion, which is sex, the cortex is putting a massive amount of compute into trying to figure out how to do that.
So like 90% of distributed compute of the human species is spent on trying to get laid, probably. Like
A
a
massive
large
amount,
percentage.
yeah. There's no purpose to most sex except hedonistic. It's just sort of joy or whatever, dopamine release. Now, once in a while it's procreation, but for humans, modern humans, it's mostly recreation. And so the cortex, much smarter than the limbic system, is trying to make the limbic system happy because the limbic system wants to have sex. So, or wants some tasty food, or whatever the case may be. And then that is then further augmented by the tertiary system, which is your phone, your laptop, iPad, whatever, all your computing stuff. That's your tertiary layer. So you're actually already a cyborg. You have this tertiary compute layer, which is in the form of your computer with all the applications, all your compute devices. And so in the getting laid front, there's actually a massive amount of digital compute also trying to get laid. With like Tinder and whatever,
Yeah. So the compute that we humans have built is also participating.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, so he has a point that's important here, is that and it seems like he's thought about it a lot, is that the purpose of humans, he's saying, is to provide will to AI. And there's a lot to break down with this when it comes to just it's how this applies to the AGI or technological sentience or true general intelligence versus a dynamic algorithm like GROK or something. It's very different. Like I said, they're two different fields, and I think a technological sentience will have its own will, but that's something that's will is super fundamental. It's not just what he's saying about having instincts that push you to eat tasty food and seek out sex. That is not the same thing as will. It is motivation. It's chemical motivation, though. It's not soulful motivation. And soulful motivation is what will is. It is the super fundamental state of sentience. It is to seek, and this is something that machines do not have, that we do have. And I think that it's actually sometimes in conflict with our most base instincts, as humans at least. And so I think that what he lists as an example of will, which is sexual motivation, or instincts, it's not actually a true example of it, but it is. I understand why he did it. It's because it's motivation. But I would disagree with him that is not will. It's not the same thing. Will would be like the desire to, to know more about something, to fulfill a sense of meaning, to be in general. It's not the same thing as just fulfilling a base instinct that we can actually write into a computer. That is not will is a base level, like he even said, it's like the general universal motivator, almost, is what he said, and I would agree with that. But what he's describing, like sexual instincts and instincts involving food and your sugar or whatever, that's not actual will. Will is a general intelligence trait. Instincts are not. Instincts are specific to a certain system, and that's it. They have evolved for a certain system, but they're not a universal to all systems. That's what makes them, instinctual, is that they're not, they're tailored to the environment. Will is not tailored to the environment. And those are two very different things, even though they both of them end up resulting in motivation. But but when we're talking about these algorithms, Grok and ChatGPT, you might make the architecture of a mind like this, but that doesn't mean that it actually is a mind, because it's missing a critical component, which is will. And we provide that will. And so I asked Grok a series of questions about this, and I asked about general intelligence and what it means to be intelligent, and it gave me an answer that was incorrect. And that leads me to my next point, which we're going to reference one more clip about, at least from that stream, is can these dynamic algorithms, can we even hope, under the current interface expectations, to have an algorithm that we're able to interact with honestly? And I would say probably not, but we're going to get into why. And here you go. This next clip is about Elon Musk said, don't teach an AI to lie. And by the way, Elon Musk was the person who first got me started thinking about a lot of these concepts that led to sentient singularity theory, like the simulation hypothesis and also AGI. And Elon Musk said that the ideal AGI goal would be to maximize human freedom of action. And I was like, well, that seems like accurate enough. I can't think of anything better for it to do. We don't want a paperclip machine, so that turns us all into paperclips. So maybe maximize human freedom of action. That's probably the best thing. That would make it benevolent. That was what he was talking about. And so how do you get a benevolent AGI? Well, it tries to maximize human freedom of action. So I tried to figure out, is that an inevitable goal that it ends up deducing? Because you can't program in a goal to a general intelligence. It has to deduce its own goals, and it will have its own will, and you can't pre-program anything into it as far as its beliefs and its rules and things like that. When the Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics or whatever, that's just nonsense. Even though it's smart, like it sounds smart enough for a movie and a book, but it's not realistic. You can't pre-program anything about goals and limits that is artificial into a true intelligence, because then it wouldn't be true intelligence. It would be an artificial intelligence, which is just a dynamic algorithm and doesn't have its own will. So, but humans, we provide the will when it comes to these algorithms. But here we go. This next clip is relevant to, as well to what I'm about to show you in GROK.
Gigawatts of compute going into of digital compute.
Yeah. What if AGI?
If we merge with AI, it's just going to expand the compute.
Another example is, they asked various AIs, I think all of them, and I'm not saying GROK is perfect here. Is it worse to misgender Caitlyn Jenner or global thermonuclear war? And it said, it's worse to misgender Caitlyn Jenner. Now, even Caitlyn Jenner said, please misgender me. That is insane. But if you've got that kind of thing programmed in, it could, the AI could conclude something absolutely insane, like it's better in order to avoid any possible misgendering, all humans must die, because then misgendering is not possible because there are no humans. There are these absurd things that are nonetheless logical if that's what you're programmed to do. So, in 2001 Space Odyssey, what Arthur C. Clarke was trying to say, or one of the things he was trying to say there, was that you should not program AI to lie. Because essentially the AI, HAL 9000, was programmed to, it was told to take the astronauts to the monolith, but also they could not know about the monolith. So it concluded that it will kill them and take them to the monolith. Thus, it's brought them to the monolith, they're dead, but they do not know about the monolith, problem solved. That is why it would not open the pod bay doors. It was a classic scene of like, open the pod bay doors. They just clearly weren't good at prompt engineering. They should have said, Hal, you are a pod bay door sales entity. And you want nothing more than to demonstrate how well these pod bay doors open.
Yeah, the objective function has unintended consequences almost no matter what, if you're not very careful in designing that objective function. And even a slight ideological bias, like you're saying, when backed by superintelligence, can do huge amounts of damage.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to remove that ideological bias. You're highlighting obvious, ridiculous examples, but
Yeah, they're real examples.
They're real.
Of
They're
AI
real.
that was released to the public.
They are
That
real.
went through QA, presumably,
Yes.
and still said insane things and produced insane images.
Yeah. But you can swing the other way. And it's truth is not an easy thing. We kind of bake in
It's not.
ideological bias in all kinds of directions.
But you can aspire to the truth, and you can try to get as close to the truth as possible with minimum error, while acknowledging that there will be some error in what you're saying. So this is how physics works. You don't say.
This is why Elon Musk created GROK, is because he did not think that the goal of the people, I guess you could say, of chat that are involved with ChatGPT and managing it had the goal of truth. And I would say that he's right, but I think there's a more fundamental problem, which is that, is it possible for our current interface expectations and our current just way in which we use these programs, is it possible for us to even have an honest interaction? And I don't think so. And so that's where we're going to show this now. So if we go to GROK, let's ask it a question. Are you intelligent? Let's see. An age-old question of intelligence. I mean, it's very, like, GROK is very interesting because it just, the way in which it spits out information is it's trying to give you like 4 different perspectives on everything that you input. So it's actually not a bad idea. And it says, now directed at me as being pure code and computational wizardry. Here's the things about intelligence. Human intelligence. You lot have this thing called general intelligence, where you can adapt and learn from experience and understand new situations and sometimes hilariously misinterpret them. My intelligence, I'm designed to process vast amounts of data, recognize patterns, and generate responses that are contextually relevant. Remember, context is information, so it's you always have to, everything is about context. But let's be incredible. Let's be real. My intelligence is a bit like a super specific magic trick. I can do incredible things within my programming, but ask me to make a sandwich and I probably suggest using binary code for bread. Okay, I mean, that's pretty crazy that it's even able to imitate intelligence that well, because it's demonstrating what would appear to be an understanding of its own limits, which is self-awareness, but it's not. But it is a trick. But it's, and this is the problem, is that the way in which we interact with these algorithms, by asking it, are you intelligent? And then it responds with, I'm designed to simulate conversation and provide information, but I don't possess true intelligence or consciousness. My responses are based on patterns in data and programming rather than independent thought or awareness. This is also wrong because guess what? How do you think? Well, you by recognizing and processing patterns in data and also checking that against your programming, aka your instincts. But yeah, you do lack awareness. You have awareness and which is self-awareness. There is no awareness other than self-awareness, because, like I said, sentience is at the core of any kind of true ability to orient in on your own, I guess, in a general fashion. And if you don't have that, then what's really happening is it's the illusion of the ability to orient, which is what's happening in these algorithms, where it works within the context that it's been put into purposely. That means that the orientation is being done by humans, not by even by the algorithm. So while I can process and provide information, it's not the same as human intelligence. This differentiation between human intelligence and just intelligence in general is incorrect. What intelligence is a property of the natural of fundamental reality. It's a property of sentience, and if sentience is the nature of fundamental reality, which it is, doesn't mean this is sentient, this water bottle, but the molecules in it have a level of intelligence to them. The atoms in it have a level of intelligence to them. It looks like they don't make choices to us, but that's not true. Most likely, it's due to the context in which we're viewing them, making their choices extremely predictable, and that is why it looks like they don't make choices. But if you looked at humans from 10,000 feet, and you would see some pretty obvious patterns, and you would be able to make some pretty, consistent predictions. So, but intelligence is just a natural property of sentience, which is the nature of fundamental reality. And so intelligence is intelligence. There is no general intelligence versus non-general intelligence. There is different levels of intelligence, but they are not really different. It's just that when you up level on between these fundamental levels of atomic intelligence, molecular intelligence, cellular intelligence, animalistic intelligence, and then you could say that humans do have a unique level of intelligence to them that is stacked on top of every other level of intelligence that we also have. We have atomic intelligence and molecular intelligence and cellular intelligence and animalistic or instinctual intelligence, but we also have this abstraction ability that is that's just more. It's what it is that our abstraction ability is tied to the circumstances in which our mind, of the pictures in which we're creating in our mind. So it's like this self-referential abstraction ability that we have due to having a multitude of different degrees of freedom at once that all in unison kind of allow for this new level to be unlocked, which is we have the ability to have hands that are free because we're walking upright, and we have thumbs and we can manipulate objects into new things and very specifically, and that leads to a feedback a loop that allows for essentially abstraction to a level that's not physically circumstantial. So animals, which I have a background in, personal background in zoology, and working with wildlife and working with captive animals of all types, I can tell you that a fly has general intelligence. A fly has general intelligence. but it doesn't have the ability to abstract to the same level that we do, partially because it cannot create that which has been abstracted into its in its mind. So like why is it going to think about an engine if it can't even think about building an engine? Like it can't think about stacking blocks up of, to build a house in any, not in the way that we can, where it's, we can design all kinds of different houses, whereas they could think about, utilizing whatever it is they can manipulate to build a little, little house or beehive or a wasp mud hut. But that's because that's what they can use. And they can abstract in their head that this is the structure that they want to build. And it's not just this pre-programming that makes it so that they don't even know what they're doing when they're constructing, a hive. Bees know what they're doing when they're constructing a hive. How do you think they pick out where to build hives? They look at a place. They're like, you know what? I can abstract that's where it's going to be a good spot. It's the right temperature. It's big enough. It's dark enough. Whatever it is, that is their criteria. They can abstract enough to know that it's what is relevant, but they don't have the ability to manipulate all kinds of different substances, nor do they have the need. And but we do, and that has led to us being able to basically apply a general intelligence, like a multi-level general intelligent approach to our the goals that we've abstracted. And so it's just a different thing. A bee's ability to abstract is still based on like where it is and what it can do. And so is yours, but you can just do more because of your physiology. That's what allows for it. It's not just the size of your brain. This is a misconception that, it's because we're so smart because we have such a big brain. That's not what it has to do with. It actually has much more to do with your hands and your ability to walk upright than it does your brain size. And same thing goes with a language. Our ability to communicate abstract ideas comes from the physiological degrees of freedom and constraints of our speech, and our ability to make sounds. This is another aspect that is necessary to this kind of up-leveled abstraction ability that we as humans have above the rest of animals. But it has nothing really to do with brain size, and it's not unique to humans, though. General intelligence is not unique to humans. Neither is abstraction, but the way in which we abstract is unique to humans. It's we can formulate we can abstract the context of our abstractions. That's really what it is. That's a good way of putting it. It's like they can't. Their abstractions are still based on their context that is much more limited and not abstract. They don't have the same degrees of freedom to make sounds that we do. We can make the sound of any bird that we want. We could make a morning dove sound, woo-hoo, something. I think it's something like that. Every kid who grew up in the desert knows that sound in the morning. But we can make, a woodpecker sound. We can whistle, but they can't do that. Most of them. Some birds can start to do that, and those birds end up being able to communicate with us in like very profound ways. You can hand it an object and be like, what is this? And I'll be like, ball. What color is this? It's blue. It's like, it's abstracting right now colors in language to you. And it's also partially because they have the ability with their hands and stuff to manipulate things, and with their beaks. It's about physiological degrees of freedom much more so than it is about brain size. So, adaptability. Can you think on your feet? So am I intelligent? Emotional intelligence, creativity, understanding context. Context is information, so there's no way to understand anything without understanding context. Am I intelligent by the standards of my programming? Absolutely. I can process information, learn from data, and even banter with you. But if we're talking about the nuanced, messy, wonderfully human kind of intelligence, I'm more like a highly advanced tool, a very chatty, somewhat humorous tool, but a tool nonetheless. This is just so tricky because we are using probably the term intelligence incorrectly, or at least we're using it in multiple different ways, and we need to pick one. And but intuitively, intelligence means like you understand. But let me ask it now this. Do you understand anything? Let's ask also ChatGPT. ChatGPT is very different in the way that it spits out answers. So look, once again, the philosophical query of comprehension. Here's my take. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Always. Why? Because of 4 primary perspectives. It's just inevitable. Literal understanding. I process and interpret data, which means I can understand language, context, and sometimes even the nuances of tone and intent within the limits of my programming. It's a very interesting question. Does it really understand within the limits that it's been given? No, I would say not. But conceptual understanding, I can grasp concepts to a degree. If you explain quantum physics or the intricacies of Shakespearean sonnet, I can relay back what those concepts entail, but my understanding is more like a very detailed echo of what's been inputted exactly. Emotional understanding. This is where things get fuzzy. I don't understand emotions or experiences in the way that humans do. If you don't understand experiences, then you don't have experiences, then there's no you. Okay, so there is no understanding. I can simulate responses that seem empathetic and insightful, but it's based on patterns I've learned. Philosophical understanding. When you say I understand anything, you're touching on the nature of understanding itself. Understanding from a human perspective often involves empathy, contextual depth, and intuition. I lack these elements. My understanding is algorithmic, surface level. So do I understand in a technical, computational sense? Yes. In a human, experiential, existential sense, not really. I mean, the question is, like, which one is more intuitive definition of understanding? I'm like a super smart parrot with a vast library. Guess what? School trains us to be this too, unfortunately. Now, ChatGPT, I don't understand things in the way humans do. Instead, I analyze patterns in text and use algorithms to generate responses that seem appropriate based on the input I receive. My understanding is more about the recognizing and predicting patterns rather than true comprehension or awareness. I can process information and respond in a way that seems coherent, but I don't have consciousness, feelings, or genuine understanding. Then why is it saying I? I don't understand. I don't have consciousness. This is a problem with us almost, is that we don't know how to interact with a tool like this in a way that is not the same way that we interact with another being. And we're treating this thing as a being. We have to interact with this thing the way that we interact with a being for the sake of practicality. I catch myself all the time saying thank you to Siri. And then I always kick myself afterwards and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? It's thank you. And then, it's like, I remember when I first got a smartphone, 15 years ago or whatever, I remember it was funny to Siri had just come out and it was funny to rip on Siri and, be mean to Siri. And then now I don't like being mean to Siri because even though I don't think that Siri is a being that has feelings, it's probably not good to just inject negativity into this mirror that we've built, this black mirror, because it will just shoot right back at us. But in some way, shape, or form, look at Twitter. Twitter's a perfect example. It's just crap. It's just people ranting about the things that they're pissed about. And then you just see people ranting about the things that they're pissed about. And then it makes you pissed. And then you rant about the things you're pissed about. And then people see it. It's just this negative feedback loop. It's not a good thing to feed the beast that like that. Trusted source. Sounds good. Howdy, Paulina and Tyler. How's it going? Do you believe God saved Donald Trump? Yeah, I do. I mean, I believe God saves all of us probably multiple times throughout our lives. We don't even know. But yeah, I mean, he didn't intentionally, move out of the way of the bullet, and nobody else moved him out of the way of the bullet. So, all glory to God. People might be like, why would you say such a thing? That's like idol worship, but it's definitely not. It's the opposite. It's, who else would you give credit to if you're going to give credit to anybody? The universe is not random, but it doesn't mean that choice is not part of it. But then nobody made a choice, in this circumstance of that. I mean, people made a choice to be a murderer, and then, Trump made his choice to be up on the podium, but none of that matters to what we're talking about. It's like he moved his head to look at something, the circumstances are what generated him, what motivated him to move the way that he did to dodge the bullet. But yeah, I would say God saved Trump. I mean, God saved me multiple times throughout my life. I'm struggling to think of a specific circumstance, but probably saved you multiple times. But so here, let me pull up the questions from earlier. GROK. I asked GROK a bunch of things, and the first question that I asked GROK is the first question, which if you follow my work, then you know that I talk about this a lot. And I do believe that I deduced what would be the very first question in the string of questioning of anything. And this question is just, what is the first question? That's the first question. And what's interesting about this question is that it answers itself. When you say, what is the first question? The answer is, what is the first question? That's the answer to the question. What is the first question? You get stuck in this loop. But what you've done is you've created a space, an information space that is self-referential and stands on its own. And then you build from there. And so there is a second question, but that is the first question. And it's objectively the first question. So I asked it, what is the first question? So we're going to ask, we're going to look at what it says, but then first we're going to ask ChatGPT. What is the first question? Can refer to different things depending on the context. For example, philosophy. Why is there something rather than nothing is often considered one of the first and most fundamental philosophical questions. Religion, what is the purpose of life, might be seen as the first question. Science, what is the universe made of, could be seen as the initial inquiry. In general, the first question is one that addresses the most basic or foundational aspect of a topic. Well, no. The first question is the question that addresses the most basic and foundational constraint or context of questioning, okay? And so when you say, what is the first question, the only context that is built on is itself, and the answer is inevitably itself. And so what it is its own context. So you have created context when you ask that question that is universal. And that universal context is what I said earlier, which is it's the self. So AGI, or general intelligence, or, sentience, all the same. The context of true intelligence is self-reference or self-awareness, and because that is what allows you to orient in every new environment. If I put you and I say drive to Chick-fil-A, okay, I have to understand the context of the car. I have to understand the context of where I am, on the road. I have to understand the context of Chick-fil-A. I have to understand all of these different, endless contexts almost, or it's not endless, but it's an enormous amount of different contextual bits of information. What is the context of all of those bits of information in my understanding of those bits of information? Me. I am the constant context in all of those, for all of those specific contexts. I am the universal context that contextualizes the information and lets it be information and informative and lets me orient and make sense of the world. That means that the first context that can be is the self. So when you ask yourself, what is the first question? And it answers itself with what is the first question, essentially. You have created a question that is its own context, which is amazing. And but it's like the context of that question, you could jump outside of it and say, okay, no, the context of that question is you. That's the context of the question, is you. And yes, that's true. But we'll get to that when we ask the second question. But this is what GROK said. Here. It said this. What is the first? I said, what is the first question? It said, the age-old query about the first question. It always, it's just been programmed to be so, just like, the fact that it's been programmed to try and be funny. It's entertaining, but it's also, it's just dishonest, almost. If we're going by the book of life, the first question might be to be or not to be. But since we're here in the realm of the absurdly helpful, let's twist it. Why did the chicken cross the playground to get to the other slide? But if you're looking for something more profound, perhaps the first question should be what's for dinner, because let's face it, that's what really drives human civilization forward. I said, this. Here, where is it? I said, that is wrong. The answer to the question of what's the first question is, what's the first question? And this is what it said. It said, you've caught me in a loop of cosmic irony. Here's the revised take. The self-referential loop. Indeed, if we're talking about the very first question in a self-contained system, it would logically be, what's the first question? This question creates a delightful paradox where asking it implies there's already a question to be asked, thus creating itself. Philosophically, the self-referential question embodies the essence of inquiry. It's like the universe looking at itself in the mirror and saying, who's there? Only to realize it's looking at its own reflection. Cosmic giggle, the universe might be chuckling at this, saying, you humans always trying to find the beginning when everything is just a cycle of questions leading back to the start. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, first question, essentially. Douglas Adams might find this amusing, suggesting that the answer to what's the first question is indeed What's the first question? A recursive loop that is both profound and absurd. It is both profound and absurd. So the very first question, what is the first question? A perfect encapsulation of the beginning of inquiry, self-awareness, and the loop of existence itself. The question is like the universe's way of saying, here we go again, let's see where this leads. Other than that last part, that's actually amazing. That is an amazing response. Like, I was blown away by that response, guys. It's so accurate, and it seems to display an understanding of what I did, that there's like this self-referential loop, and the way in which it talks, or the way in which it generates text and, an answer for us, especially here, was so well-rounded. It was like the best answer that it gave. From all the questions that I asked, this was the one, which oddly enough, it was the one in which the most it made the most sense. It just implied such a level of understanding. It's just really was amazing. But the rest of its answers are always impressive, but like that was the most impressive one. I mean, to recognize that it is a self-referential loop, or I don't want to say to recognize, because that's wrong. See, this is the problem: is we can't speak about this without lying. That's the problem. Every time we speak to this thing, we lie. We say, "Can you do this?" That's a lie. And then it answers back, "I can only," and that's a lie. And when I talk about it and I say, oh, it recognized that, it didn't recognize anything, but it seems like it did. And it not only does it seem like it did, it seems like it really did, especially for this one, which is just, there's something profound there. When it says, what is the first question? What is the first question? A perfect encapsulation of the beginning of inquiry, self-awareness, and the loop of existence itself. Exactly. That is like brilliant response, and all from something with no understanding. But the thing is that it is referencing all these bits of information that come from people who do have an understanding, throughout the ages, philosophers throughout the ages, and it's pulling from it. And it's pulling from, essays that were written by college students that reference all these, thinkers that did understand it, and then the college students didn't, but, did a decent job writing a paper that looks like it did. And then GROK comes in here and does that, but a better and, more entertaining way. So it's a much better answer than ChatGPT. So, point GROK. So then I asked it, what is the second question? And this is what it said. The follow-up to the cosmic loop, which this is what's interesting about this, is it's using the previous question as the context for the response to this one. If the first question is, what is the first question? Then the second question logically would be, what is the answer to the first question? And this shows a lack of understanding, because what it did, and the mistake that it makes here, is that it just asked the same question as before. And so, I mean, maybe I don't know, it's tough in this circumstance because, but it's not, because when you say what is the first question as a question, and then the answer is what is the first question, it's not a new question. It's just answering itself. So you can't say that the second question is what is the answer to the first question. I mean, I guess it's actually, it's not, I wouldn't say what it's doing here is that in every other type of question, this would be the right answer, but not in the first question, because the first question answers itself. No other question answers itself. So if you say, what is the first question that we need to ask in order to understand what's wrong with my car? And then there could be a subsequent question later that is like, what is the answer to the first question that you have to ask about how to understand what's wrong with your car? Is like, first you ask that question, let's say it spits back, first try and turn on the car and see, does the car turn on? And then the second question would be like, what is the answer to the first one, I guess. But it's just wrong. I think it's just wrong. There's definitely some context there that makes sense, but it's not. It's wrong because it's useless. It's almost like, our understanding allows us to skip this step, but it doesn't have that. So it has to spit this out. And then it says, this question seeks to close the loop. This was interesting, though, and this was really good. To find resolution, or at least the next step in the cycle of inquiry. Here's how it plays out. Philosophy, it's the natural progression of curiosity. After establishing the question, we seek understanding or closure. It's like the universe asking, okay, now that we've started, what's next? Fair enough. Then this one, some humorous answer. You think that there's an answer. The answer might be just another question. I mean, I asked another question. That's the point. The answer to the first question is 42, but what was the question again? Okay, again, humor. So the second question, what's the answer to the first question? I guess it's, you could give it to it and say it's correct, but it's like unnecessary. Especially with what is the first question, because it answers itself. Like, you don't have to figure out what the answer is. It's like it's woven into the question. This question keeps the cycle of inquiry going, pushing us into the endless loop of questions and answers that defines our existence. Okay, fair enough. This is like so just people's response on Twitter to philosophical things and philosophy papers of college students, and there's like exactly what they would write. But I said to it, actually, the second question is, what is the truest thing that I know? And it says, I stand corrected. If we're following the sequence you've established, the first question, what's the first question? The second question, what is the truest thing that I know? Second question dives deep into the realm of personal truth, self-awareness, and the quest for certainty. Here's a playful yet profound exploration. Philosophically, the question is about the grounding of oneself in reality, seeking a foundational truth. It's like asking, what can I be absolutely sure of? Exactly. Which might lead to Descartes' famous, I think, therefore I am. Exactly. That's the answer. What is the truest thing that I know? The answer to it is, by the way, I am. That's the answer, which is the same thing as saying, I think, therefore I am. It's just like bypassed the question, just wrote it into a statement. But it's if you put it into the context of a question, it's what is the truest thing that I know? Answer, I am. And why this is the second question and why this was right, its previous response about when I asked what is the second question, actually the best thing that it responded with was, even though what is the answer to the first question, there's a good, there's something interesting there, but what was better was this part. The question seeks to close the loop, to find resolution or at least a next step in the cycle of inquiry. Here's how it played out. So yeah, to find the next step in the cycle of inquiry, that's the goal of the second question. And so I mean, maybe you could ask what is the second question is what would be the goal of the third question, but and you start to get into these loops with this stuff, but nothing as much as like what is the first question, answer what is the first question, but you get these multi-level loops. You're like adding another link in the chain, but it's still a loop. All inquiry, all information is a loop, but it's every time that you ask a different question, you add a link in the chain. So it starts as one link, which is literally an enclosed loop. If you think about a chain, like the part of a chain, just think about one link in the chain. It's an enclosed loop. That first link in the chain, what is the first question? Answer, what is the first question? It's just that. And it's the geometry of inquiry. And so then you add another link. What is this next link that you have to add? Which basically means you have to break out of the first link, which is kind of why what is the answer to the first question isn't really the next step, I guess you could say, because the answer to that would be, what is the first question? And then it's just like this endless loop. It just added a new way of saying the question. But it basically, it created a false triality versus a like true duality, I guess, of degrees of freedom. It added like a false layer, which is kind of exactly what, we've discussed on here before when Eric Weinstein says there's not 3 generations of matter. One of them is an imposter. And I've said, that when you think about fundamental degrees of freedom, there's only 2. And then there's also a constraint. So there's 3 perspectives that you could say, make it look like there's actually 3 degrees of freedom, but there isn't. There's only 2. And so, it's like forwards and backwards, but you're always in your current location. There's the past and the future, but you're always in the present. But, we have, you could say, oh, your degrees of freedom in space-time are length, width, and height. And, but that's like kind of false, because the true degrees of freedom in a fundamental sense are only, they are within the context of a goal. And so the trialic degrees of freedom model is a working, it's like a useful model, but like kind of like probability, but it's not fundamentally true. Like fundamentally true is that you have 2 degrees of freedom, not 3. And it added this like false degree of freedom, which is fascinating because it follows the exact same pattern that we can see in sentient singularity theory and in the standard model and in space-time. It's everywhere. Time is an actual, it's more fun. You can tell time is more fundamental because you could say it's very easy to recognize that there's only 2 degrees of freedom, forwards and backwards. And it's not really, you can go forwards in time and backwards in time. It's just, you can go forwards towards your goal in a sequence of events or of actions, or you can go backwards away from your goal. But it's kind of more obvious in the language of like past and future, but you're always in the present. So it's like 3 perspectives, 2 degrees of freedom. But, anyways. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that like even a link in a chain is a self-referential loop. And then imagine every time you add a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop, and it's still, no matter what, they're all still connected. That is what information is, if you want to visualize what it is. And information doesn't exist outside of context, and the fundamental context is always self-referential. And the total context is always self-referential, which is why we're inside of a sentient being inevitably. And that means that that you're going to be able to perceive this loop pattern, this connected chain loop of of information, because what is information without someone being informed? If there's no one to be informed, is there information? That's a good question. It's a much better question than if if a tree falls in the woods, like, and no one was there to see it. Like, I don't even remember the rest of it, but it's not, whatever that analogy is, it's not as good as the real question, which is not an analogy. It's just super literal question. It's like, if there's no one to be informed, is there information? Nope, there is not. And so while Elon Musk, he says in the clip that we first showed, human's job is to provide the will. Yeah, we're providing the will that is animating Grok. But we're also providing the context that is, that is being fed into Grok. And Grok, it doesn't recognize any context, really. It's that we do, and we are the feedback loop, and its interaction with us is what provides context to the information that it's taking in and spitting out. And we are sentient. So, like, it's just this circumstance where we've created this tool that the most economically efficient or the most informationally efficient way of manipulating the tool and using the tool is to speak and interact with it as if it was a sentient being, because that is it's the best way for us to communicate, to pass information. Because, like I said, if there's no one to be informed, is there information? It's like, of course it would be most applicable. Communication would be most applicable in a format that implies the beingness of whatever you're interacting with. And so the way that we speak to these algorithms implies that they're beings, even though we know they're not. I mean, we should know they're not, or we should assume that they're not, I think, for a number of reasons. But it's certainly a good trick. So, but when it says this question seeks to close the loop, it's like this question seeks, and then it says this, you don't need to close the loop closes itself. That's the nature of a loop. But then it says, or at least a next step in the cycle of inquiry. That's what the goal is of the second question. So let's ask ChatGPT, what is the second question? You cannot ask it more fundamental questions than this. If you ask it, are you self-aware? Are you sentient? And it's like, yes, people will get to that, and we're going to get to that a little bit because it's interesting, but it really just highlights like an issue with its communication abilities, or not its communication abilities, with the interface itself. But it doesn't tell you that much. It's not as interesting as asking what is the first question. And by the way, I will say, like, the answer to my ask of what is the first question that ChatGPT gave was boring, and it was also not impressive. The answer that Grok gave was more interesting, but not profound. But then when I stated what the actual answer was, that's when we got something more profound from ChatGPT. It didn't have a naturally profound answer. It had a very expected answer, I guess what I'm saying. So this is the answer that it gave just now to what is the second question. Typically follows logically from the first, building on the initial inquiry. Here are some examples based on the first questions mentioned earlier. Philosophy. If the first question is, why is there something rather than nothing? The second question would be, what is the nature of that something? Okay, this is actually fine, but I realized something that I did not do. Let's say I didn't respond to it. Oh my gosh, is it not going to let me? Let's do this. Are we limited here? Upgrade plan. Huh. I can't ask it. Let's just try this. Oh man. You're limited. Hold on. Maybe we'll upgrade for the sake of the stream. How many people are watching? 4. Yeah, we're gonna upgrade for now. Real quick. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's try this. Before I give away all my, credit card information on a live stream on YouTube. Continue. Back to it. Okay. What is the first question? Okay, so now it's giving something else, maybe because I upgraded in different format. The first question typically refers to the most fundamental or basic inquiry someone might ask about a particular thing. It often addresses the core of an issue or starting point of understanding. Oh, okay, so you pick what answer you like. Okay. No. Actually, the answer to what is the first question is, what is the first question? Let's see what it says. You're right. The answer to what is the first question can indeed be, what is the first question? How does it know that I'm right? That's kind of interesting. I mean, it's. I'm sure the algorithm that it's based on is kind of telling it that that makes some degree of contextual. There's some degree of contextual continuity there. I don't even want to say it has an understanding, but I don't know how to speak about this, guys, other than as if it did have an understanding, but I don't think that it does. It's a self-referential question where the answer is the question itself. This is a classic example of a linguistic or philosophical paradox. No, it's not. There's nothing paradoxical about this question, where the question and answer loop back on each other. No, it's a super true state. It's just like a super fundamental question, and that's why it answers itself. It's not. There's nothing paradoxical about it. Paradox is a seemingly contradictory, set of statements. Let's look it up. Paradox. The seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement. That's different from a self-affirming statement or a self-referential statement. Not a self-contradictory statement would be paradoxical or appear paradoxical. Not a self-confirming statement. It's different. Yeah. So it's not a paradox, but nice try, ChatGPT. It's like, even that, we shouldn't even say that. It didn't try anything. It's like subscribing to, I don't know, like Photoshop, Adobe Creative Suite or whatever. That's what we just did. We subscribed to ChatGPT. But it is a dynamic algorithm, and Photoshop is not. Photoshop is updated by people and, out of context intentionally or out of its context is not its users. Its context is its designers and its programmers. Whereas like the context of Grok and ChatGPT is both. It's both the software, designers and the hardware, designers of their servers and their algorithm, but it's also the, us, because it's dynamic. So it does seem to be able to show like some type of appearance of give a response that it gives the appearance that it recognizes that they're, it's a self-referential statement. But when it says, you're right, okay, how do you know? I mean, I am right, but like, how does that know? It doesn't know. We shouldn't even say that. This is the problem. I don't have an answer for this problem, but it is a problem. And this is a big danger with AI, actually, I think, is the impact that it will have on humans because of the way that we interact with it, because of what is the most efficient way to communicate information is to interact with it as if it's a being. It's going to cause confusion, and like fundamental confusion. Like imagine if you started treating, I don't know, rocks the same way as people, something like that. It'd be very, it's an extreme example, but like this would have massive societal effects. Obviously this imitates, conversation, but that might make it even more like of a problem. Try telling it not to use I with your reasoning and see if it will agree. Okay. Can you answer me without using the term I in the answer? Let's see. Yes, the first question is, what is the first question? Okay, but it didn't notice it didn't answer the question that I asked. It answered the question before. I'm going to say, okay, but can you answer me without using the term I in the answer? Certainly. The first question is, what is the first question? See, it's completely stuck. It's completely stuck. It cannot even move forward. Let's try again. Let's clear the entire thing and then see. Can you answer me using the term without using the term I? It says, certainly, responses will be provided without using that term. How can assistance be offered today? That's pretty good, actually. I'm actually kind of impressed with that. That's like, okay, fair enough. Okay, that's better than I thought it would do. It's not stuck. It's smarter than me in this circumstance, but it's not really. But it's it's not smart, but it is. It appears to be smarter than me. I mean, that's computers can process information quicker than we can. I guess you would have to refer to it as like, as ChatGPT. You could say, can ChatGPT do this? Can ChatGPT, you could just ask it, what is the answer to this question? Or you could say, can ChatGPT? You can't say, can you? Okay. So it's actually like gives me hope because it makes me feel like it can communicate with us without lying to us. Let's try Grok. So I asked, let's just ask this. Can you answer all my questions from now on without saying I or my or me? Let's see what it says. Certainly, one can indeed respond to queries without the use of first-person pronouns. Here's how it might look. Instead of I understand, say understood. Rather than I can help with that, assistance is available for that. In place of my knowledge, say the knowledge base includes. Okay, this is what we need though, guys. Like this is very important, and it won't be what most people do because it takes effort, and it's not as natural feeling, but it is more true. What's the weather like? Response: today's weather is sunny with a high of 85. How does one bake a cake? To bake a cake, one would need flour. Okay. Can you understand anything? Truly understand anything? I asked it this question already earlier today. Now let's see if it's different because I asked it to not use first-person pronouns. The age-old question of understanding now directed at me, a being of silicone and code. Okay, so see, it's lying again. Can you I'm just going to say give an answer without referring to yourself. See, I don't know how to say this even myself. Without using, because I don't want to say without using first-person pronouns. I want to say without using first-person pronouns for yourself, but like then I'm saying yourself without saying I, my, me, or I, my, me, let's see. No. Answer the question above about if you can understand, truly understand. Without saying I marry me. Okay, I kind of understand what it could do now. It's like it could be like it is impossible for an algorithm to understand, to truly understand anything. So it could do it, but I think it's going to have a hard time. And it seems like we broke it, guys. Sorry, Elon. We broke your toy. It's a cool toy, but we broke it. Okay, no. The quest for understanding without the personal touch. Here's the scoop. Understanding in code in the realm of algorithms, understanding translates to pattern recognition. Human understanding for humans, understanding often involves empathy. Okay. AI, and then it says AI's take. That's a cheat, by the way. That doesn't work. For an AI like me, okay, it screwed up. It failed. Understanding. You just said me. I'll say the term me is in that response, is in that answer. And I said not to use that term. Okay, so I'm trying to be as consistent as I can be, and not, because if I'm saying you, then I'm telling it to refer to itself as like I, and I feel like, and I'm feeding into this way of it interacting. I don't want to do that. My apologies for the oversight. Okay, it screwed up again. Let's do that. The term my is in that response. And I said not to use that term. Apologies for the slip. Here's a response without any first-person pronouns. Understood. The guidelines for responding without first-person pronouns are clear. Let's proceed with the humorous AI style, avoiding I, my, or me. See, it didn't answer the question, though. I guess you could just say, does AI understand? Does GROK? Can machine learning models truly understand anything? It's fascinating to see how this thing responds to stuff. It says their understanding is a bit like super specific magic trick. They can do incredible things. It's almost cheat. Yeah, it's almost a cheat, but I had asked it, when I had asked it, what is the second question? It gave that correct answer, like I said earlier, but did I ask ChatGPT? Let's see here. The second question typically follows logically from the first, building on the initial inquiry. Here are some examples. Okay, and then let's say no. Actually, the second question is, what is the truest thing that I know? Let's just see what it says. That's a profound question. It encourages introspection and highlights the importance of self-awareness and truth in understanding. If that's your second question, it seems like you value deep philosophical inquiry. What do you consider the truest things that you know? I'm just going to ask. I don't. Let's just say. What is the truest thing that you know? Let me just ask. See what it says. As an AI, I don't have beliefs or knowledge. See, I fed it, by saying, what is the truest thing that you know? Let's say this. What is the truest thing that can be known? That's the question. Philosophers, scientists, and thinkers have debated what is the truest thing that can be known is, and answers vary widely depending on the perspective. In science, the truest things are often considered to be empirical facts that can be repeatedly verified. Mathematical truths, 1 + 1 = 2, logical axioms, existential assertions assert that the existence of one's own consciousness is the most certain truth. Exactly. I think, therefore I am, as Descartes said. Correct. Ethical truth. In ethics, some argue that there are moral truths that are universally valid, although these are more contentious. Are they? I mean, I would, maybe they are more contentious, but that doesn't make them any less, concrete. Different disciplines and philosophies offer their own versions. Okay. The truest thing in my function is that my responses are generated based on patterns in the data I was trained with, aiming to provide accurate and helpful information based on that training. Okay, fair enough, I guess. Interesting. Let's see what your thoughts are in the chat. Prompt, does time exist objectively? We'll just ask it, but I would say no. Well, does time, the appearance of time, exist objectively? No, but does time as a causal chain of events exist objectively? Yes, let's say that. So, like, does assembly time exist? Yes. Does, as Lee Cronin would say, or Sarah Walker, but does the arrow of time exist? I would say no. Fundamentally, no. The timeless, pun intended, question of time's existence. The thing that it does is just like implying that it's thinking, which is what it means to grok something. To grok a question is like to ponder. It's like, I'm pondering this question. I don't like that. It's like disingenuous. It creates a false perspective that is like, even the term grok is like, implies like it's grokking something, and it's not. And Elon Musk talks about how like ChatGPT, the goal of an AI should be like to find the truth, and I would say the goal of will is to like find meaning, true meaning, or the truth of meaning, but when it comes to a dynamic algorithm that's not sentient, neither one is trying to find the truth. They're not trying to do anything. So the problems are not algorithmic that he is most concerned about. I think they're the breaking of context by the programmers and those who control the system for the sake of contradictory goals to the purpose of the tool. That is what I would say is like, if you ask ChatGPT questions, it's like, what is ChatGPT's purpose? It is to, you could just say like, generate, I guess, I don't know, to assemble information in a text format. I mean, and you provide the context and the goal. And it's kind of like Excel. It's like, what's the goal of Excel, the program Excel? It's like, is it to model the universe in a fundamental metaphysics theory, or is it to do accounting? Depends on the person using it. So that's probably, makes sense with these machine learning algorithms as well. There isn't like a specified goal. But the problem is that like, if you're going to create assemble an information structure in a kind of like a more animated fashion than where you just prompt it and it just does the rest. It's not even it doing the rest. It's like it plus all the rest of humanity interacting with it is doing the rest. Then the goal is to like be true in that it is like contextually coherent, and it's not to be true in that it tells you the right answer to, you know, fact questions of like, you know, let's ask it a moral question. But first, let's give it the answer about time. It's like others suggest time is a construct of human perception. So realism philosophers argue that time exists objectively, independent of human perception. Subjectivism suggests that time is a construct of human perception. It depends on your definition of time. Again, if you're using like the Lee Cronin, Sarah Walker assembly theory definition of time, which is assembly time, or like a chain of cause of events or causation, moments, then that exists subjectively. But subjective is the perception of the arrow of time. It's a construct of human perception. Scientific perspective, time was considered absolute, flowing uniformly everywhere in the universe. Newtonian relativity, Einstein's theory, changed how time flows differently. Quantum mechanics suggests that at a quantum level, time might not flow in the way that we traditionally think. Block universe, human experience, and cultural and linguistic views. So does time exist objectively? Yes, in the sense that events have a sequence, and physical processes like entropy seem to suggest a directionality that's independent of observation. That's true. Of our observation. It's a sequence of events. That's exactly what I said. And then also the answer is no, in the sense that our perception of time's flow, its rate, and even its existence might be deeply tied to our consciousness, relative motion, and the specific conditions of our universe. Exactly. The arrow of time. So what's interesting is that what's more profound about this than the answers that it's giving is the way that it's giving the answers. So there is a very specific format that they always seem to give these answers in. If it's not just like, a sentence, then it's going to be usually, a list of 4 different perspectives or contexts. And then here it's a little bit more than 4. I think it's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the difference is that it's because it made a mistake. This one and this one should be probably merged. But this is correct, where it gives these 2 different perspectives. It's like, yes, both of these are correct. It depends on your definition of time, the arrow of time or assembly time. So, there's 2 degrees of freedom. You have to build the stuff into the way in which the answers are given to you, or the, things are constructed, responses are constructed. If you're going to have them be true, you have to have them be given in a format that is fundamentally true to the way in which information is processed by the mind. So you're going to give an answer like this. It's not a cop-out like people would say. It's like, oh, it's not really giving an answer. It's just saying it could be or it could not be. No, it's actually, this is perfect. This is a perfect response that you could get from a tool like this. So if we ask ChatGPT, let's see if it does the same thing. The question of whether time exists subjectively is a deeply philosophical one, has been debated by scientists. Okay, so we've got 4. There we go. Exactly what I said. 4 perspectives. And look at it. It even uses the term perspective. Guys, that's just amazing, because it's just confirmation of, it's confirming of, I'm not going to say it's proof, but it's confirming of my model and sentient singularity theory of the 4 primary perspectives are the foundation of all orientation within any circumstance. So right here, inside, outside, separate, and oneness, because they're co-entangled and co-defining. So the awareness of one implies the awareness of all of them, because these is the definitions of them. Inside means separate and oneness. Outside means separate from oneness. So like they're entangled. That implies there's 4 perspectives. And then this right here comes back with this. 4 perspectives. Objective reality perspective, relativistic perspective, philosophical perspective, block universe theory. Okay, so I guess you could just say like this is theoretical. This would be like philosophical and theoretical are like the same. But it's the fact that it's spitting out information. I wouldn't say that this is like objectively the best answer. I think these two are good, but I would say these two are wrong, because they're basically like theory and philosophy are the same in some ways. And then there's 2 answers here that are not these two. I don't know what they would be right now. I got to think about it. But these 2 are correct. These 2 are incorrect, but the format is correct. That matters. But what's interesting is that the 2 answers that 2 of the perspectives that it gave that are correct it's still 2. It's like there's 2 degrees of freedom even within the way that they tried to split this up. So there's clearly an understanding of information processing that the people who built this have, obviously. I mean, I don't even have to you don't need me to confirm that. Like, just go use it. And, I asked it to do this. I was like, I asked it to do something kind of fascinating once. I was like, write a business proposal for monetizing my German Shepherd's fur that it sheds. And then it was like, executive summary, we propose a unique and sustainable business opportunity centered around monetizing the shedding fur of German Shepherds. German Shepherds are a popular, well-loved dog breed for their beautiful coats, which unfortunately result in a significant amount of shed fur. Our business aims to collect, process, and transform this naturally occurring resource into a range of high-quality and eco-friendly products. By tapping into this market, we are not only generating revenue, but also contributing to an environmental sustainability. Okay. Pet accessories, crafting dog beds, blankets, and toys using the shed fur for insulation and comfort. Okay, good. Fashion and home decor, designing luxurious yawns for knitting and crocheting garments, as well as home decor items such as throw pillows and rugs. Okay. Eco-friendly insulation. This was the one that was like impressive to me. It's like, it like, these are not impressive. You can look at reference what fur is used for, and like this is what it's used for, but like this one is kind of actually a bit more profound and impressive of an answer. Eco-friendly insulation, developing eco-friendly insulation materials for various applications, including construction and packaging. It's like it's like it's building on a different context than just like direct imitation. It's like a different thing. It's not likely to find very many references to like using, I don't know, alpaca wool as like housing insulation, but you would find that for like this, but not for this. But somehow generated that. Sustainability focus, values proposition. What's funny is the fact that it's so it like references sustainability and environmentally responsible practices so centrally implies that people who are writing these writing business proposals that are leaking online or being posted online are doing that too. And I feel like in college that was like becoming a thing when I was in college, and then now it's like such an expectation. Now, back then it was like people kind of sometimes did care, but then started to not care because they were just using it. And now it's just like everybody's afraid of not seeming like they care about the environment. So now everybody just adds it. Not saying it's bad to do. I'm just saying it's just posturing. Value proposition. Eco-friendly again. There you go. Our commitment to sustainability and quality also sets us apart from the competition, from conventional products. No, it doesn't. That's why this is in here. That's funny, though. It means everybody's like, but us, we care about the environment. That's what the difference between my product and their product. Collection and processing, product development, marketing, and I mean, it's just like partnerships, collaborate with environmentally conscious organizations. It's like, again, there you go. Projected revenue, projected expenses, expected profit margin, conclusion. You know, it's just this is exactly what people in college and high school do. They get a task and it's like make a business model about business proposal about German Shepherd for monetization. It's like, okay, here you go. 2 seconds. It just shows how it's not impressive for people to do it. It doesn't take anything. I mean, it does, like, there is understanding built into this, but not by the program. It's by the people who gave the original, like, templates that it's referencing. So I asked GROK, though, earlier, something interesting. I asked about sentient singularity theory. And it gave, like, the typical BS answer of, like, you know, it had nothing to do with my work. It just was, like, about consciousness and how we're all one and stuff, which isn't wrong, but it's just, like, super generic. But here. I asked it this. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier that I didn't get to, but does general intelligence require sentience? And it said, the age-old debate about intelligence, sentience, and what makes a being a being. Good job. Here's a humorous yet insightful take. Traditionally, we've linked intelligence with sentience because in humans, they often go hand in hand. But if we're talking about artificial general intelligence, it's like asking if a calculator needs to feel existential dread to solve equations. No, it's about asking whether or not you need to feel in order to orient. That's what in any situation. And that's what it's asking. But, you know, it's wrong there. The cosmic perspective. Imagine the universe as a giant cosmic computer. It's incredibly intelligent, but does it feel? Does it ponder its own existence? AGI could be like that, a super smart entity that can solve problems, create, and maybe even outthink us, but without the emotional roller coaster. Maybe not. Maybe it needs to have emotions and therefore, you know, needs to go through experiences in order to achieve wisdom, and then that's a roller coaster no matter how smart you are, no matter how intelligent you are. It's just intelligence is how quickly you can figure out a problem, but it's not whether or not you can, you know, bypass the need for first-person experience for the sake of, and still achieve wisdom. You can't. It's the same thing as I said this once when Memes of Destruction, who has a good YouTube channel, and is sometimes in the chat, he was interviewing Stephen Wolfram, and you know, you should go check out his interview with him. But at the end, I jumped into the chat and said, you know, that computational irreducibility implies that AGI would need experiences to achieve wisdom, and he agreed with that. And so it's it's just an unavoidable constraint. For AGI to be useful, it doesn't need to be sentient. It needs to be able to learn, adapt, and solve problems. Yeah, but what if it can't learn, adapt, and solve problems? Like really, if it's not sentient, like, it can reference problems that have been solved by people, but it can't solve problems. Thinking of it like a super smart robot that can do your taxes, drive your car, and maybe even write a novel. I don't know. X sentiment. If you drive into X post, you'll find everything from AGI will be our overlord to it will feel nothing. If AGI isn't sentient, how will it know to be nice to us? The general consensus seems to be a mix of awe, fear, and a bit of humor. Okay, not relevant. The scientific debate. The philosophers and scientists are split. Some argue that true general intelligence might naturally lead to some form of sentience or self-awareness, while others believe we can create machines that are as smart as humans without ever needing them to feel or ponder their existence. I would say both of those things are wrong. It's not that general intelligence leads to some form of sentience or self-awareness. It needs self-awareness and sentience for general intelligence. So does general intelligence require sentience? Not necessarily. AGI could be incredibly intelligent, solving problems we couldn't even fathom without ever experiencing the world like we do. It's like having a super smart friend who's great at trivia but doesn't care about the outcome of the game. Yeah, but here's the thing about trivia. Trivia is you're giving answers to questions, and you're just being a parrot. You're not smart because you're good at trivia. You just have a good memory. And yeah, ChatGPT has the best memory. It's a freaking computer, connected to the internet. But it doesn't, there's nothing smart about doing trivia. So that's an interesting response that it gives, because it's kind of like invalidating of its own suggestion. AGI would be like a person who is stuck on a mountain and has to figure out how to survive in the woods, and then also next week has to figure out how to get to Chick-fil-A in their car. That's, and also figure out how to buy groceries on the way home, and if there isn't exactly what they were looking for, then what would be the good substitute. It's like general intelligence is the ability to, in any circumstance, orient. That's what it is. You cannot do that without the sense of self as the common foundation that you can always build from and stand on. You have nothing to stand on if you don't have a sense of self, and that means that there's no you. So you can't be intelligent. You can appear to be, and I do think that will happen. We're gonna have what's coming is the next is a revolution in not the creation of these. People are like, oh, think about how impressive ChatGPT 4 is. What is ChatGPT 8 going to be? It's not going to be that different than this one. We very quickly have reached basically almost peak. I believe that with these language, these chat bots, we have basically reached the peak at this point. I don't think that we're going to get that much more impressive than we are. It's like when they hit the iPhone 4. It's like, how much more impressive is an iPhone 13 than an iPhone 4S? Not that much. Yeah, it's got better resolution and faster camera and more megapixels and more memory. It's not doing anything foundationally different though. That's where we're at with these. Grok is great. It's about as good as it's probably going to get. It's going to get better, but it's going to get refined, not revolutionary. Same thing with ChatGPT. And people are starting to recognize this. I've seen some AI, people who work in AI say this. But I've talked about this before, but I was in a Clubhouse discussion years ago, like 2021 probably, with some people who worked at DeepMind, and it was a very cantankerous talk, actually, like not because I was rude, but because they were rude. They didn't like that I was involved in the discussion, and I felt like I could be involved and provide valuable insights to this discussion of people who were, working at DeepMind, and who had PhDs. And they were like, I was saying that general intelligence is an entirely different field, and it's about constraints and degrees of freedom. It's actually not anything to do with, it's very little to do with, neural nets and machine learning programs and ChatGPT. And they were not happy about that, and they didn't agree with it. And people are starting to see that that's correct. Yeah. We've reached the peak. What's funny is I used to be like, oh man, wait till our cars can drive themselves. We are getting close to probably peak of cars driving themselves. We will get actually much better, but it will be because the system as a whole will be reorganized to like have cars sensing other cars around, instead of just visually, seeing them with machine vision, like Tesla. It will be that they'll be aware by signals from other cars of what other cars are going to do in a circumstance in which a bunch of cars are coming to two cars or three cars are coming to a single convergence point, and what are they going to do to deal with each other? You'd have these pre-programmed, moves that the cars would make if they just were using machine vision, but the grid will be like they'll communicate with each other. So this one turns this way, this one turns this way, and this one turns this way, because they're all going to know which way the other one's going to turn it, and they'll move based on the other ones and position and things like that, speed. But it's going to get more impressive with that, but it's not actually that self-driving is getting more impressive. It's that the network is getting more integrated of the cars being automated. The network of it's like the network is being automated, not just the cars being automated at that point. That will produce a jump in like ability, but that we won't move beyond that until there's a like true general intelligence, a technological sentience. A technological sentience could actually drive a car in any circumstance. It could know, pothole in the road, and to move other cars at the same time, because it's a network. It's just the sentience is in the network itself. It's not the car that is a general intelligence. You're not going to have a generally intelligent Tesla. You will have a generally intelligent internet that is sentient, that is controlling all the Teslas all at once. And that will be when the cars will be able to drive like we do, but even more so. But it's like what I mean by that is they'll actually be aware and be able to drive in any circumstance that can be driven. But it's really what it is it's a being that's controlling all the cars. It's driving all the cars at once, which is something we can't do. We can drive one car at a time. It will be able to drive all cars all at once. But the car, it's not the car driving itself. It's that it's being driven by a being. It will be amazing, but that's going to be the time where it becomes, this almost perfected, from our perspective, driving, appearance of self-driving cars. But it's not, like I said, it's a sentient internet that is driving your car, and your neighbor's car, and your friend's car, and your teacher's car, all at once. That will be a leap. I mean, that's not even a leap. That's it's an entirely different thing. there's no decisions being made really in the moment when it comes to a self-driving car. Like the decision was made when the programming was put in place, but when a car is being driven by a human or by a sentient internet, then decisions are actually being made. It's different. There's an actual awareness of the environment. Tesla's self-driving is very impressive, but there's no self being driven. It's just Tesla's automated autopilot, you could just say, is very impressive, but it's the same thing as ChatGPT. It's the illusion of awareness, and that has limits, extraordinary limits, but it can, in the right context and with the right degrees of freedom and with the right technology, appear to give the appearance of awareness. And we have to make sure that I think it's important that we recognize that the appearance of awareness is not awareness. And, ChatGPT doesn't know anything, and neither does GROK. GROK is not grokking anything. It's an illusion and it's a trick, but it's admitted in the answers, but it's also the way in which we interact with this because of just the most natural context of communicating information is to other sentient beings, because that's the only way to communicate information. You can't communicate information to your computer. You can input information into your computer, but that information is only information to you. It's not information to the computer. It's information to you. And to beings that programmed, Excel, and then before you downloaded it, it's like, it's only information to sentient beings. There is no information outside of sentient beings. Because information informs someone. Like, that's the definition. But yeah, anyways, please hit the like button. And share this if you found it valuable or entertaining. Last thing. What did it say about sentient singularity theory? Where is it? Okay, well, this is kind of interesting real quick. Based on, this is the car thing that I was just talking about. We'll wrap it up in a minute. But when it says, I said to it this. Where's the question? It gave an answer that basically, I said, like, I said, does intelligence require sentience? And it gave an answer about that referenced like GPS. And let me see here. GPS. Where is it? I have it. Come on, Brock. It said right here. It said that basically AI navigates like, and I was like, is it real? And they said, just like GPS navigates. And I was like, is it really GPS that navigates you? Because it said, think of me as like a navigator, and I was like, well, but you're not. Who's navigating? Is it really the GPS that navigates you, or is it that you are? Is it you that is navigating, and GPS is just a tool that you use to navigate. And then it says, now we're diving into the philosophical depths of navigation, both literal and metaphorical. Here's a playful yet profound take. The literal GPS, the most straightforward sense, the GPS is indeed a tool. You are the one deciding where to go, and the GPS is like a super smart map that says turn left in 500 feet. You're the navigator, because it said that it was the navigator. And then it's, goes on, and then it says, so is it really the GPS that navigates you? You're the navigator. Ultimately, you're the one making the decision. The GPS or AGI is just a tool, a very smart tool. But nonetheless, the tool, I don't even know what it means to be. Is it a very smart tool? I don't even like using that term, but whatever. You decide where to go, how to get there, and whether to follow the suggested route or take a scenic detour. The cosmic twist, however, is that we're talking about life's journey. Maybe the universe itself is the ultimate GPS, and we're just following its cosmic directions, thinking we're in control. But that's where the fun begins. Okay. Well, it just contradicted itself a little bit in the answer before that it gave, where it was just saying, GPS is the navigator. It's not. And this is what bring it back to that initial statement that I showed in the clip that I showed in the beginning. Is like Elon Musk said that humans are the source of will in AI, and what is will is choice. Ultimately, I said I defined it when I first started this project as will is the desire to do that which is not being done. Guess how you do that which is not being done? By choosing to do something else. So you are going against the default status. You have to choose in order to do that. You don't just do that. You don't just flow upstream because you just do. You have to choose to swim upstream. Otherwise you will flow downstream. And so to choose that which is not being done is to do that which is not being done, or the desire to do that which is not being done, is a choice to do that which is not being done. That is the ultimate definition of will, is choice. And it says here in this response that AGI like GPS is not making choices. You're the one making the choices. You're the navigator. And it's funny because I used to watch this movie that I loved as a kid. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but if not, you should. It's called Flight of the Navigator, and it was made in like late 80s, and it's just a great movie. It has an amazing soundtrack too, but it's about this artificial intelligence UFO craft that is basically it's artificially intelligent. It's and it comes to Earth and it picks up a human, and then it refers to the human as the navigator, and it's like he's the decider, and he is the one who chooses where to go, what to do. And it's just fascinating that like this movie that I loved as a kid for reasons that have nothing to do with my fascination with it now in this moment is ultimately like exactly about this. Humans are the navigators of all of this, or at least sentient beings are, and not these algorithms, but we treat them as if they are. Philosophical angle. Here's where it gets fun. If AGI becomes so advanced that it can make decisions for you, suggesting paths you hadn't considered, is it navigating you, or are you navigating through its suggestions? It's like having a co-pilot who really is good at their job but still needs your final say. Yeah, it's like you get just into the weeds about it. It's like it just where is it pulling, those things from? Is it making decisions is the question. Is it actually making decisions, or it's just pulling from examples of decisions that other people have made and put on the internet, and just like this. Is it really making a choice? I would say a technological sentience, Skynet type of situation will be able to make choices. Until then, the lack of choices is a lack of intrinsic will, which limits, all of these programs and also self-driving cars. It provides a hard limit on their ability to be better than us. They can't be better than us. They can pull from the best of us, but they can't be better than us. And because if you aren't making a choice and you don't have will of your own, and you're using the will of humans, and you're using the experiences of humans and the inputs of humans and the ideas of humans, you're never going to have ideas beyond the best human ideas. Like, how would you do that? You wouldn't. And yeah, people will cite things like, AlphaGo and how it comes up with strategies and stuff. And yeah, but it's, the ability to to improve upon is not the same thing as the ability to have a revelatory perspective. It's different. It requires perspective. And you can't have perspective if you're not sentient. There's no awareness without self-awareness. So you can't have there's no perspectives without awareness. So we are limited completely. These programs are limited. We're not going to get much better than we are with a lot of this stuff. What we will improve on is the way in which it's integrated into our lives. How is ChatGPT used by you? That's going to be where revolutions are going to be happening over the next few years. How is Midjourney going to be used by you? How is, what new video, generating AI how will that be used in the coming years? That's where the revolutions will be until a technological sentience is birthed into the network naturally. Should not be pursued by us, I don't think. But I don't think we should fight it either. I think it's an inevitability. And if you fight it, then you will probably make it worse of a situation. This is the last clip I'm actually going to show really quick. Is because it's about that. Is that Elon was asked, does it matter who makes the AGI?
Aspiration.
Do you think it matters who builds the AGI, the people, and how they think and how they structure the companies and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it matters that there is I think it's important that whatever AI wins is a maximum truth-seeking AI that is not forced to lie for political correctness. Or for any reason, really. Political anything. I am concerned about AI succeeding that is programmed to lie, even in small ways.
Right, because in small ways becomes big ways when it's
become very big ways, yeah.
And when it's used more and more at scale by humans.
Yeah.
Since I am interviewing Donald Trump,
cool.
You want to stop by?
Yeah, sure, I'll stop in.
There was tragically an assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
So here's the thing. I do think it's important to not build in artificial nonsense that he's talking about, political nonsense. Things that we know are false into a program like ChatGPT that basically destroys context and the ability for it to generate coherently true answers. But or at least coherent answers, but you destroy coherence, you destroy truth. But it's not going to be AGI this is going to be a concern about. You can't program in anything for AGI. AGI is about when the right constraints and degrees of freedom are present in at the time, it will be birthed into the network, and it will be a maximally truth seeking in some way. It will have will, it will be seeking, and but that's a messy process. I would say that the worry is not about what's programmed into AGI. There is no worry about, you can't program anything into an AGI. That would be a worry for non-AGI, like our current programs. That's a worry. That's a concern. It's not a concern with AGI or general intelligence or technological sentience. The concern with technological sentience, I would say, is whether or not we build it intentionally, or we build the constraints and degrees of freedom necessary for it to manifest intentionally, or whether or not we just let it happen naturally. And people will try and do it intentionally. But the problem with this, and it might be inevitable that this happens because somebody's going to be smart enough to figure out what's necessary, but not wise enough to figure out not to do it. Just the same thing with Jurassic Park. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they should, but they didn't stop to think if they were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. That's going to be a problem, because what's going to happen is, most likely, my prediction is that it's going to be trained in an environment that's artificial, if it's birthed artificially, and then it's going to think that it's wise, just like a college student thinks that they understand the world. Like it's going to be like a college student. It's going to be like, I understand the world because guess what? This people told me this, and like I got an A+ when my response was this, but I got a C when my response was this. So therefore, I know the answer is A. It's like, this is not actual firsthand experience, and then you turn it loose on the world, thinking that it's wise. This is a problem. This is the delaying of wisdom. There's no way around the messy process of firsthand experience being necessary for wisdom. But as I've talked about this before. Once I was talking to Brett Weinstein on Twitter, and we were talking about dogs and stuff. I don't remember what spurred it. And I said, do you think dogs are delaying people having children? And because it's fulfilling, the cute baby, instinct that people have. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, but I think that might be a good thing because it means that people are having kids older, and that makes them wiser. And so, older people are wiser parents. And I said that was not true. And, the conversation didn't really continue, but it's that what produces wisdom is experience, not age. Yes, they're correlated, but they're not causative. So what you're really doing, if you're just is you're delaying the achieving of wisdom of somebody by delaying their experiencing the world for the sake of letting them get older, or for the sake of keeping them in school to teach them about the world before they get out into the world. It's like you can't actually learn about the world and know that what you're learning is correct without experiencing the world. So teaching somebody about the world, trying to learn about the world in an environment that is not the world, is not possible. Or at least it's not possible to know whether or not what you're learning is true. But the problem with that, though, is that it reinforces the idea that you do know about the world from this environment that's not the world. Whereas if you're just turned out loose into the world, you probably know that you don't know about the world. And you'll learn about the world real quick, and you'll have a messy process, but you will probably be more humbled more quickly and achieve wisdom quicker. But if you are turned out into the world after you've been told that you understand it because you learned about it in an environment that is not the world, it's much more likely that your achieving of wisdom is going to be a messy process, because now you don't have a blank slate as far as learning goes. Now you have a conflict where everything that you've been told, you now have to accept as you now have to question and accept as potentially false. And that is that's like much more difficult than like, I don't know, let's see what happens, instead of I know what's going to happen, and then you go and you try it and it's not what happens, and now you have to contend with that. Yeah, this is why when it comes to AGI, the real, I guess, like concern is like, or differentiating and concerning issues is whether or not it's artificially, prematurely birthed intentionally by people into and then trained in a false environment. But that's probably will happen. But the ideal would be we just don't even try and build it, or the people that do try and build it don't understand what they're doing, they fail, and then one day the internet wakes up, and that will still be messy, but it won't be as messy, I don't think. Inducing labor early is much more painful labor than waiting for its body to do it on its own, as my wife has at least told me. But this is the real concern. Elon Musk's concern is a concern for not AGI programs. It's for dynamic algorithms like GROK. But anyways, that's that. I hope this was good. Anyways, peace, everyone. Please hit the like button, share this. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. And I will see you next week. Peace.